people are fans of karaoke, the latest craze that's sweeping Scotland. And you can see the best of it when NB returns for a brand new series. Thursday night, 10:40 on Scottish.
When you find out that you're doing more to protect the family car than your family's health, it's time for a new deal. Phone Norwich Union Healthcare on 0800 424242 and find out about personal healthcare.
Mum, I've worked really hard at school. Mum, I've hurt me neck.
Love, I'm starving.
And what about me? I ran a taxi service, did some weightlifting, exercised my artistic talents, and served up a proper gravy dinner.
A Bernard Matthews roast, prepared for your convenience from prime New Zealand lamb.
Wasn't this room blue this morning?
Ooh.
A Bernard Matthews lamb roast makes the most of your day.
Come home to the comfort of white meter heating this autumn. We'll fit it for free, no extras. That's a promise. Or, if you're replacing old for new, we'll take £25 off each heater you buy. And take your old ones away too. Call in to a Scottish power shop now and warm to white meter heating this autumn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an evening of stand-up comedy. Oh, he's a bit of a cheeky one, and he's a lad. Some of his stuff's quite well observed, you do that.
I think he's got a perfect right to say that, I really do. My name's Ben Elton. Good night!
Richard F. Mackay offers Europe's finest furniture, carpets and beds with interest-free credit. Richard F. Mackay, South Clark Street, Edinburgh and Baileyfield Crescent, Portobello.
Hey, where's the dead fishes? A hernied.
When you're ill, the sooner you find out what's wrong, the better you'll feel. That's why with Norwich Union Healthcare, when you need a specialist consultation, you'll get one straight away. Find out about personal healthcare on 0800 424242.
Going to have a baby. Well, congratulations. Where are you going to have it? And how? Will the father be there? It's none of our business, of course, but the 100 women here have words of advice, comfort and warning on the thrilling and terrifying subject of childbirth. And we hope you'll be joining us. Scottish Women, Friday night, 11:15.
We're back to Thursday evening viewing on Scottish, and at 10:40 we'll have a roundup of today's Scottish news. Before that, though, a specially extended News at 10.
Geoffrey Howe resigns over Mrs. Thatcher's view of Europe. He tells her you're wrong and the election hangs on it. She says, I've got the party. We didn't really differ that much. Mr. Heseltine says it won't wreck the Conservatives. Labour's Mrs. Smith says the government's in total disarray now. Good evening. The Deputy Prime Minister, Sir Geoffrey Howe, resigned from the government tonight over Europe. He told Mrs. Thatcher that he was anxious about the mood that she had struck. He said Europe would be crucial to the Conservatives' electoral success and the future of the nation. Mrs. Thatcher said she accepted his resignation more in sorrow than in anger. She said it was unexpected. Tory and Labour MPs expected Mrs. Thatcher would now face a serious challenge to depose her as leader, with only 18 months left before the next election. Labour's leader, Mr. Kinnock, said the Prime Minister had been bitten by a man she'd treated as a doormat, and she deserved it. The Conservatives, he said, were fundamentally divided on Europe.
Sir Geoffrey, looking completely calm as always, was at Cabinet this morning. By late this afternoon, he was asking to see Mrs. Thatcher to tell her that just as he believed she'd come on board on Europe by joining the ERM, she'd undermined all that by her conduct at the Rome summit. Sir Geoffrey told the Prime Minister in his resignation letter, "I am deeply anxious that the mood you have struck will make it more difficult for Britain to hold and retain a position of influence in this vital debate on Europe." He added, "In all honesty, I now find myself unable to share your view of the right approach to this question. On that basis, I do not believe I can any longer serve with honour as a member of your government." The Prime Minister told him in her reply that she regretted that his decision had come unexpectedly after we've worked together for so long. Mrs. Thatcher continued, "Your letter refers to differences between us on Europe. I do not believe these are nearly as great as you suggest." Tonight, outside his office, Sir Geoffrey's Parliamentary Private Secretary, David Harris, read out a short statement from him.
All I can do is to read the statement which I issued on his behalf at 7 o'clock this evening, and that simply says, after meeting the Prime Minister this evening at his request, Sir Geoffrey Howe has announced his resignation from the government. The exchange of letters will be published later.
But will Sir Geoffrey now mount a direct challenge to Mrs. Thatcher's leadership?
That I can absolutely and categorically deny. I do have this authority to say that there is no question of his standing against Mrs. Thatcher in the leadership election.
In Rome last Sunday, Mrs. Thatcher used some of her strongest ever language about the failings of the community. After the other leaders tried, in her view, to bounce her towards a single European currency, but failed to sort farm prices out, she called the community incompetent and the whole situation a mess. She was especially scathing about the farm price row.
Gone are the vague, grandiose, grandiloquent phrases. They couldn't take refuge in those. They're actually dealing with details. And where went all their grandiloquent phrases, the community that matters, it's Britain that's isolated? You come into the detail, you nearly get agreement in the Agriculture Ministry, and whoomph, France says no.
But at the very same time in London, Sir Geoffrey was barely concealing his demands that Mrs. Thatcher should change course and join the Howe-Hurd view of Europe, as had already happened over the ERM.
All of us started off believing that monetary policy took primacy over that, and it was difficult to see how it was compatible with membership of the exchange rate mechanism. All of us have changed our mind and have come round to conclude that that is right.
But on Tuesday, Mrs. Thatcher was talking in the Commons of no further surrender of British sovereignty, of her distaste for the ideas put forward by European Commission President Jacques Delors.
Of course, the chairman or the president of the Commission, Mr. Delors, said at press conference the other day that he wanted the European Parliament to be the democratic body of the community. He wanted the Commission to be the executive, and he wanted the Council of Ministers to be the Senate. No, no, no.
After the events of the weekend, Mr. Kinnock had probed away at the differences between Mrs. Thatcher and Sir Geoffrey, her deputy.
Doesn't she owe it to her deputy to say that he enjoys her full confidence on all matters?
The Deputy Prime Minister, my right honourable friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, is too big a man to need a little man like him.
At Westminster, where this morning Sir Geoffrey followed Mrs. Thatcher into the chamber for prorogation, the formal ending of the session before next week's Queen's speech, the news has produced astonishment but not total surprise among the opposition.
Sir Geoffrey Howe's resignation. Chasm, the split that runs in the Conservative Party on Europe runs from the very bottom. The truth of it is that his resignation today means that either her position is untenable or that of the Foreign Secretary and the Chancellor is untenable. We shall see.
Well, I think it's devastating for the government. When the number 2 in a government parts company with the number 1, there's something seriously wrong, and it shows that the future of Europe is a very divisive issue indeed in the Conservative Party and right in the heart of government.
I think Sir Geoffrey's obviously done the very honourable thing as the honourable man that he is, but I think the writing's on the wall for the Prime Minister. I think the skids are well and truly under her now.
Well, obviously it comes as an enormous shock. He's a respected member of the government for years, and I'm very sorry to see him go.
Britain's view of Europe's future has caused a series of disagreements inside the Tory party and the government. It's brought resignations and reshuffles over the years. Our diplomatic editor, Edward Sturton, looks at the battles between Mrs. Thatcher and her ministers to decide just how European Britain really is.
It was a Conservative Prime Minister who took Britain into the European community, but the party has never settled its differences over Europe. A deep division of principle that has been there since Edward Heath signed the treaty in 1972 could be brought to a head by Geoffrey Howe's resignation. What's known as her Bruges speech, it's been evident that she's deeply suspicious of the direction EC membership is taking Britain.
Rather like inviting to try to suppress nationhood and concentrate power at the center of a European conglomerate would be highly damaging and would jeopardize the objectives we seek to achieve.
For Geoffrey Howe, a committed European, it made the time he spent as Master of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office a constant struggle, seeking to build bridges with Europe, but constantly restrained by the Prime Minister's scepticism about the European ideal. He records his own stand on the European exchange rate mechanism. It drove him to a quiet act of rebellion in 1988.
The arguments are powerful too for fulfilling our long-standing commitment to join the exchange rate mechanism of the European monetary system when the time is right. And as I have said on many occasions, and I say it again, we cannot forever go on adding that qualification to the underlying commitment.
At the Madrid summit in the summer of last year, a modest victory, Mrs. Thatcher persuaded at least to accept the principle of joining the ERM. But by this time, the strains between the Prime Minister and her Foreign Secretary, strains brought principally by the European issue, were becoming insupportable. A month later, Geoffrey Howe moved out of the Foreign Secretary's residence, given the job of Deputy Prime Minister.